everybody. Good morning. Uh, thank you so much for having me. I think it's my first time at the DevFest. Can you hear me properly? Okay. Um, it's an engineering gathering, isn't it? Okay. And I've heard all of the talk about building products, coding, AI. But I thought that for my first time here, it's important to kind of talk to you about the people. So when the organizing team sent two topics to pick from, I picked this one, building for billions, scaling technology for Africa's next growth phase, because I think that it's a chance to talk to people about the humanity behind the code. So a lot of my talking today is going to be focused on the humanity behind the products that you build and the people who you're trying to serve. So, code meets humanity and how you cannot separate your development process from people. Now, how many of us have seen the show Silicon Valley? Okay, enough people. And this show lasted, I think, 4 or 5 seasons. And the team behind it spent a lot of time building a product called Pied Piper. Only that when they launched it, they realized something important, that for the number of years they spent building that product, they didn't do any testing with actual people. And so what they built, at the first instance of launching, was unusable. And I think that that's important for everybody because that's how many of us start out. You identify a problem, you fall in love with that problem, you fall in love with the version of the solution to that problem that you have in your head. But, like you're writing this code, you're excited about it, but a lot of us don't fall in love enough with the people who use our product. And if you're building for billions, you're building for a billion actor human beings whose input is important to your product. So, forgetting the human that you serve is not an option because real innovation, real engineering actually only happens when you have empathy and your code working together. So, two important lessons. Why? You cannot forget the humans that your tech will serve, and empathy and engineering go hand in hand. And I'll talk more about it. Now, how do you build in the real world? I'm standing here today speaking to you. I've been working in this tech ecosystem for 12 years now, right out of uni. And I graduate of computer engineering, used to write code. A lot of you are much better at it than me now. But I believe that building in the real world is a lot different than building in your universities, Covenant, OAU, UI, Unilag, because the real world implications, they just look different when you're now serving actual people. And I want to say Africa's next growth phase won't be built in ideal conditions, but there's nobody that knows that better than all of us here because we live here. So our ideal conditions are a non-starter, so we're building in reality. Now, how do you build in reality? Now, our digital economy is booming. Africa, everyone's talking about Africa rising all of the time, but we have constraints, weak infrastructure, low trust, unstable regulation, data costs. But building for people and building for billions means starting with one person's problem, one person's need, and making sure that that person feels safe enough to talk to another person about your product. Now, everyone underestimates the value of peer-to-peer recommendations. You build a solid product, it's a fantastic work of engineering, and you wonder, why don't people use it? Why are people not downloading my app? Why are people not going to my dashboard? It's just, with all due respect, the product lacks humanity. It lacks reality. Yeah, it sucks, but that's just like the really harsh way to put it. If you don't build with people at the core of your engineering, your product will suck. And truth be told, no one will simply use it. So, how do you build for context and not just for scale? The truth is, we talk about scaling. You go from seed to like a growing company, and then they tell you you're ready for scale. What is scale? True scale really is when you achieve a deep understanding of the people that you're serving. Scale is numbers, but numbers don't come without that understanding. How do you get from having 10 people using your platform to 1 million people using your platform? The truth is, it is understanding and hacking human behavior. If you don't, your numbers just won't grow. So scaling is more than just more users. It's a deeper awareness and an understanding and empathy for how people live. How do they live their lives? I use PiggyVest as an example. In 2016, when we started the company, it's not that there were no banks. It's not that there were no asset managers. It's not that there wasn't anywhere people could put their money. It's that there was a niche problem for young people that nobody was paying attention to. And so when we got the first user, when we got the first 1,000 users, when we got the first 1 million users, what do those things have in common? It's an understanding and an appreciation of how young people wanted to interact with their money. It's not understanding how the entire Nigeria wants to do their money. It's not, oh, you guys, banks are doing it badly. Disruption is really never that like big bang that everyone's trained you to look out for. Disruption is meeting people at the point of their need, at the point of their behavior, and then doing a slow shift towards a new thing. Kind of like a psychological behavioral modification. The best products, the biggest, most scalable products do that. You don't even notice when a product is changing your behavior. That is true scale, and that's the true feat of engineering. And I think that when you're building products, you have to carry along with you. Look, the African context is very different than Silicon Valley. You know, in Silicon Valley, you launch a product, you get your check from A16Z, you have 1 million users. Ours is different. Our context here is bandwidth issues, attention issues, trust issues, regulatory issues, money issues. So your product, in addition to being excellent and smooth and having great UI and having great UX, has to somehow build in clarity, reliability, and trust. They don't teach that in any computer science class. All of that is only achieved by studying and understanding and internalizing human behavior. And what is that? Empathy. Scaling in Africa requires cultural frequency, cultural fluency, and not just your technical capacity. Engineers cannot exist in a silo. You guys are awesome, but you can't do it alone. That's just a fact. Build like you live where your users live. Build like you eat how your users eat. Build like you move how your users move. If you don't do that, they are not going to trust you with their money because there's simply a lack of understanding. There's a communication gap, and no amount of excellent coding can fix that. Now, infrastructure. Infrastructure is cultural. So the first thing is Africa's context and building in the real world. And this is just about how infrastructure is more than servers, it's about people believing you. So I want to talk about PiggyVest again. Our biggest build, our best build, wasn't technical, it was credibility. At the time we launched, there was a great influx of infra, Paystack, and other kinds of other products like that. And so, there's now this product that allows you to charge people's cards in a recurring way. Believe it or not, in January 2016, that was very new. Subscriptions where people could charge your card, the way you complain about like your gyms, charging your card, that wasn't a thing. Every month you had to go and authorize a payment from your card, but we're such a long way from that. So that's Paystack disrupting because we wanted to pay monthly, but we didn't know how to. So they built something that every single company that existed at the time wanted to jump on because it was the next step in the evolution of human behavior. And that's how you think about products like this. You don't just build infrastructure for infrastructure's sake. You build trust infrastructure, consistent communication, visible humans, and reliability over the years. I think that tech is, I don't do it anymore, but tech is easy. Writing the code is easy. A number of people can write code. Almost everybody in this room can write code. But real engineering, the one that converts users to your own advocates, is hard. And that's where the gap typically is. When people are considering thinking about, I want to build for 1 billion people, you cast your mind to your product and you expand upon your product. You don't expand upon your own connection with the users and how they use that product. Let's talk about reliability. Now, when you launch a product, everyone's telling you, how do you grow? How do you scale? And for many people, you talk about ads, you talk about marketing, you talk about out of house marketing. You'd want to do digital. But the best piece of engineering and the best piece of marketing is reliability. The first billboard or any paid marketing for PiggyVest didn't happen until 2020. That is 4 years after the product was launched. We relied heavily on word of mouth and peer to peer recommendation and reliability, making sure that the product did exactly what we said it'll do. That's how you build. I mean, hindsight is 2020, and in the moment we didn't think that's what we were doing, but today we realize that that compounds. See, the flashy MVP phase is really fun. The one where you get feedback on Twitter and everyone is like, oh my God, this is excellent. That's not growth though, right? The boring part is people using your product and coming back. The endurance, the longevity, you becoming the SI unit for the service that you offer. That's reliability. The longer you stay reliable, the more people you reach. And like that, it's like magic, the passage of time. People will constantly ask you, how do you get people to trust your product? The way to get Nigerians and Africans to trust your product is by not dying, is by not disappointing them. And that is just being reliable and being here year in, year out, continuing to fix their problems, continue to give them feedback, continue to accept input from your users, and growing. Empathy is a feature. I know that it sounds super cliche, but building understanding into your product is a real thing, right? An example is during COVID, when we had to reduce the breaking fee on the piggy bank feature because people needed their money. Those things, those tiny things are important in your product design journey, in your engineering journey. Empathy shortens the feedback loop between what your users need and what you as a developer are building for them. When you're building, how often does anybody here building ask themselves, what is the emotional state of the person using my product? Have you ever done that? Has anybody ever done that? And I think it's an important question. Why will a person use this? Why would they be happy to use this? Why will they make the decision to switch from product X to Y? Or why will they, when they hear about this product, decide to use it? Are you connecting to the human that you're building for? Building in silos is very interesting because, look, a lot of us are really smart, incredibly smart. You're building systems in your head, but leaving out the human never, ever ends well. Silicon Valley is a comedy, but we see it in real life every day. Excellently built products, they fail, and they fail badly. The cost of it is empathy. Now, data is not understanding. You can collect data and still not understand people. There needs to be a balance for you as a product developer between your quantitative metrics and quantitative feedback. The tweets, the user rants, the love letters. If you had asked me all of these things 10 years ago, I'd have disagreed with you. I really, really believe in ones and zeros. And as a person with ADHD, I think that numbers speak to you better than people. But that's just not true. People speak as people, and they tell you what they want every time. 12 years on, I prefer to have a conversation with the users to understand. That's why we have open house where we're immersed in the feelings of 3,000 users in one day, because that feedback is priceless. You can connect all the data, the events, patterns, logins, habits, all of that. But one random unsolicited tweet randomly on X sometimes tells you more than 10 dashboards, all of your Meta Studio or whatever you guys like to call it. All of it can be irrelevant in the face of one person's valid lived experience. Developers who listen always build better systems. I'm happy to be giving this speech today, But if you spoke to our CEO, Somto, he'll tell you the same thing. All of the product advancements that we've made, and the best ones, are born of listening to people and how they feel. And striking that balance between your numbers and the people that you are serving is actually how you prepare for scale. Building with stewardship. Now, when you handle people's anything, you're handling their dreams. Um, a lot of this has to do with accepting that you're serving people. And it doesn't matter if you're building a retail product or if you're building a B2B product. All of it is stewardship. If I'm handing you my business's transactions, I'm handing you my life's work. If I'm handing you my savings, I'm handing you my life's work. If I'm going to school on your platform, I'm handing you my future. So edtech, health tech, fintech, agritech, it doesn't matter. When you build, when you engineer, you have to do it from a place of service. Whenever you don't, you're starting from the wrong place. As the speaker that went before me said, the money is a byproduct of everything that you're doing. All of your lines of code, they touch someone's health, their education, their future, their rent, their survival. For Nigerians, using an app is a primal, fundamental decision. And you can tell by how afraid they are to commit their lives to any of the apps. And so, that Silicon Valley thing, move fast, break things, Nigeria has disproven it over and over and over again. You just can't do it here. If you look at our graveyard of startups who are no longer with us, every single thing that they have in common is trying to move fast, trying to break things. We've heard leapfrogging, jumping, but unfortunately, building for scale in Africa is innately recognizing, respecting, and appreciating the process. You have to do it one at a time. You must move thoughtfully, and you cannot break trust. It takes one to break the trust of a user in Nigeria, and they never come back. What's my recap here? So build for context and not just scale. Infrastructure is cultural. Reliability is growth. Empathy is a feature. Data is not always equal to understanding. And build with stewardship. Now, scaling, the actual building for the billions. Our version of Silicon Valley must have heart. I'm so sorry, I don't mean to come here and deviate from your engineering, coding, and AI direction, but you're never going to be able to build for more than 1,000 people if you're unable to connect to them. It's just what it is. In the show, as in real life, every version of your app disrupts something except the real problem. We've seen many products on the internet. People launch products every day. This product allows you to spend from this. This product allows you to put your card and blah, blah, blah. It allows you to link all of these things. We all want to change the world, but changing the world is really easy when you focus on apps that change lives, right? In the old days, we'd come to events like this or like at our own Google Accelerator program. Someone had told us, are you building a painkiller or a vitamin? I'm not going to lie to you. It's probably one of the worst analogies I've ever heard, but it's correct. If your product is not solving anybody's problem at their core, at their base, for a market like this, it's dead on arrival. And we also hear things like build local, focus global. Yeah, okay. But if you don't start where you are, no one else is meeting you there. These are just facts. It's not trying to discourage you. You can build for the world from Africa. But if Africa is not the market that you're starting with, if you're not building for the people who you know, you're not connecting to the people out there. The only reason all of the attention that Africa got at the time when there was a market boom, the only reason for that is because Africans connect to the product as well. Your patient zero is not going to be an American. That's just the truth. So, if you want to build apps that change the world, start with building apps that change lives. Uptime, shipping, testing, all of these things are deeply connected to how people live their lives, and you must recognize that. Now, so build for billions, ground in one. I think that the best products in Africa will be technologically superior because I think that Africa has incredible talent. But the products that will win here will not just be superior technically, they'll also be emotionally intelligent. I, again, had the opportunity to be in this tech space for over a decade. I've seen many startups come and go. I've seen apps come and go. You can examine by yourselves the apps that have sustainability. The most sustainable apps are the most emotionally intelligent apps. The most sustainable apps are the most human apps. The most sustainable apps are the apps that people can connect to. Because at scale, what keeps people with you is definitely not your algorithm. The emotionally intelligent apps sometimes aren't even the best ones. You wonder why people use X products sometimes, but it's because at the end of the day, they know their people. All the super apps in Lagos, right? All of the super apps we have in Nigeria, they're all so colorful. And everyone always talks about how their UI is so cluttered and so clunky. But people use them. Millions of people use them. Tens of millions of people use them. Have you ever stopped to ask yourself why? Why does everyone use OPay? Have you seen the app? Why do they use it? Because they can connect with it. It's an emotionally intelligent app. It's built to act like it fulfills your needs at its core. How do you replicate that? PalmPay. If you take a step back from writing code and building beautiful UI and center the people, you understand why those apps have that much adoption. Why is it that every time you want to pay someone, you ask them, what account? OPay, immediately. Why? Build for billions by all means, but never forget the one person. They are actively and successfully serving people at the bottom of the pyramid. Why are they able to do that with UIs that most people wouldn't want to push? Think about it. The people. What do the people want? And if you figure out what one person wants, you'll figure out what 1,000 people want. You figure out what 1 million people want. And eventually you figure out what 10 million people want. And then you're on your way. So, thank you.
Good afternoon. So I have a question in particularly. Basically, when we look at the tech space in Nigeria and even worldwide, but especially in Nigeria and Africa, it has changed rapidly, especially with the introduction of AI. Back then, maybe say, for example, when you want to solve a problem, it needs to be unique in the sense of that even if there are people solving before, there are only like 2 or 3 people who are solving that problem. But right now, it's almost like there's almost a solution to almost everything. Not everything though, but it's almost like every single day when you're trying to solve something, something already comes out. And what is coming up or who is solving that particular situation with you is a big game player. So I'll give an example. You're trying to solve a solution or you create a product, and the next thing, OpenAI just like bring that same solution that you're trying to solve. So how can you compete with those big game players in this day and age?
So this is my question back for you, because I don't think I should answer it, is do you think OpenAI is solving the exact problem you want to solve for the people that you want to solve it for?
Not
like for instance, because the truth is, when a big player releases a product, they have more resources, right? And I'll just use an example that's close to me. Again, PiggyVest. When we launched at the time, Diamond Bank had a product that was exactly that. They had bigger resources than us. Right? But can you head if you're solving a real pain point, if you're actually connecting with the people who you're solving it for, I think you win as long as you continue to build. The problem is, so there's 2 ways like for solving problems: top down, right, or bottom up. If you identify one particular thing, solve for that, and then layer on, you're likely to do better than a bigger player who's starting with all of them and not narrowing until much later. Today, Diamond Bank doesn't exist. Do you get? But PiggyVest does. We're still here. So I don't think that a big player launching what you want to launch is the point. Do you understand? I think that how you approach your problem solving and how you actually allocate your own limited resources. This is not to say that I'm not conscious of the fact that resources are limited. And honestly, a bigger player solving the problem you want to solve is a challenge. But I don't think it's a challenge that immediately takes you out the game. I think it's a challenge that immediately changes how you approach pushing out your solution.
Thank you. I understand.
All right, thank you very much. The second person was, yeah.
So my question is, I'm actually building a startup that is really focusing on agriculture. So now my question is, for someone, he said you should actually be emotionally inclined while building something. So what's the best approach to actually get to the emotional aspect of people? Do you say by creating a community, and how do you get those emotional support from people to know what exactly they want and at what time, without being kind of buggy and pushy, like just going at the right time and knowing how to do it? So what's your take on that?
I mean, we just talk to people, and it's based on their willingness to give you feedback, right? I don't know what product you're building. Let's assume you're building for farmers. You have to ask them what their problems are, and you have to ask them because you want to listen, not because you want to pitch them a product. You get ask them how do you do this thing, and what's the process like? Everybody, most what I've seen a few people like do that discovery phase is that you're asking with a view to pitch it, not to understand them. So the first step is actually understanding how we were lucky in that the problem we wanted to solve, we were living it. Do you get? If you're not living it though, so we had an advantage. If you're not living it though, then you have a bit more work to do in the listening bit because you have to actually hear them. Because sometimes you think you're building a product for them and their answers are telling you, no, you're not. And then you're telling them, what if you did it like this? And that's where the communication gap breaks down, and that's when you seem pushing. So just listen. Ask as many people as you can at the phases that you can. You may not always get the right answers. You may not even get answers at all, but continue to ask because that's the only way you can actually really improve what you're building.